Google to improve browser speed. Is OpenAI going socialist? Cybersecurity warnings, phishing attacks, they're all in the news, and we're here to talk about it. Happy to have you along. Welcome to another edition of TechWatch. We keep an eye on tech so you don't have to. Brought to you by NetworkProvidersInc.com. If you want a friend, a partner, a strategic leader in IT, think NetworkProvidersInc.com, would you please? Jay Harrison with me. Welcome, sir.
Sam, how's it going?
It's going pretty good, except for the cybersecurity warning.
Yeah, we talked about this a little bit in a previous episode, but as you get emails and stuff, when in the old days, I say 2 years ago, you'd get an email, you knew it was spam. It was broken English, it was choppy, it was garbage. You could delete it almost instantly. Now with the advent of AI, they're recording increased use of AI-generated messages and deepfakes to deceive users and bypass safeguards, both in the heuristics that would look at it in like Google and they would know it was spam, and in people looking at it and going, this seems legitimate. It's well written, it's polished, and it's hard to distinguish it. In fact, they may even use AI to introduce a subtle errors that humans would make. So it's becoming a war, and the arms race of spam and scams versus humans that are just trying to get their work done continues.
And the AI, like I was mentioning in the other show as well, hey, it's a situation where, folks, remember, AI is incredible, but it's incredible for the bad guys too, right?
Yeah, it's a double-edged sword, like any tech is, right?
Yes, of course. Tech is neither good nor bad. It depends on whose hands it's in. Anyway, I wanted to bring that up, though, because I believe it's a serious security warning. People be very, very careful. Some of the best companies now, and this is what Network Providers is doing and others, they're starting to do these tests, Jay, where they'll send you out intentional phishing to see if you fall for it. And if you fall for it, they're like, got them. Hey, you know what? We need to work with you on training a little bit, because people are really the best and the worst side of security. They're the worst if they're not educated and caught up. They're the best if they know how to watch and spot and prevent these things. And training is really the key to get that done.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And even people have sometimes rewards for people that can catch that stuff in businesses, and like you said, training for people that don't or fall for it.
All right, I saw a headline, Jay, and I thought I'd try an interesting experiment. I thought I'd share it with you. Ready?
Okay.
Headline says, OpenAI pivoting to socialism. I thought, what? OpenAI pivoting to socialism. So I got on a ChatGPT, and I said, hey, this is the latest headline about you. Why not just provide information and let people decide for themselves? Do I need to find another AI assistant? It's kind of interesting. So I just went to, they always say if you have a problem with somebody, take it straight to them, right?
Yeah, that's the best way.
So I thought I'd try that with AI, and I did. And so I just basically said, hey, this headline says you're moving to socialism. What gives? Do I need to find another AI assistant? And its response is interesting, Jay. The socialism label is media framing of OpenAI's new economic policy discussion paper, not the assistant taking a political stance. My role is to provide facts. Whoa. Separate reporting from opinion and let you decide for yourself. What do you think of their response to or to the headline of the inquiry, Jay?
I think it's pretty good. It seems pretty neutral. My question is, do you think that it delivers on that? Do you think that it just is separated from opinion and lets you decide from yourself, and it only provides facts?
No.
I would say that it does a pretty good job. I would say, for example...
I would say no, and let me explain to you why. I think it does a really, really, really good job, to your point, Jay. 100%. Does a great job.
It does a better job than Wikipedia.
I agree 100%, and I think it's doing its very best to be balanced.
Right.
But, Jay, it can only be balanced with its own data set.
Right.
In other words, it can't be balanced in a real sense. It can be balanced in its own mind, if you will, in its own sense.
On what data it was trained on. And how it's been shaped, and the guardrails that have kind of been put up.
Exactly. So let's just say that 10 is totally socialist, 0 is not socialist at all. A real scale would be, hey, I'm going to use the 0 to 10 scale, and I'm going to reference everything. But the problem is society is pretty socialist, Jay, around the world, in the United States, in academia. I mean, I can keep going, in big business, in corporations, in governments, and all those entities put in. So the scale is really probably like a 6 to 10 reference, not a
Right.
0 to 10. That whole conservative, independent, capitalist based conservative viewpoint isn't really in its data set in fair representations. And so it's more like a 6 to 10 scale. And yes, it's very balanced in what it has to the best of its ability. I think it's trying hard. I think it's an honest answer to the best of its ability. But it doesn't even know that it's pivoting towards socialism. It doesn't realize it because it doesn't have the real discussions. And how do I know this? Why do I say this? Is it just an objective Sam Bushman thinks he knows? No, it's because I've talked to it for a lot of time. Because, remember, I do IT, I do political stuff, I do all kind of things. And it'll bring up something that's socialist, and I'll flat out say it's socialist, it's this. And at first it'll kind of argue against me. And then when I push a little harder, it goes, you know what, you're right. Sam, you know what, you bring up some good points. And then it starts to get more conservative as I talk to it. Well, that means my model is learning from me and becoming more conservative. But that doesn't mean that I have enough mojo to push the conservative side to the broader model and to its interpretations based on its big brain or its big data set. And so I think it like you say, it does a great job. But I'm not confident, Jay, that it's really not trending towards socialism. I think it is, even though it doesn't mean to be. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. I think you're right. And I've seen this before too. I mean, just yesterday, I was talking to it about the percent of oxygen that somebody, we were talking about high altitude and stuff like that. And in how much, like if somebody's in a closed room, do they expire because of low oxygen or because of carbon dioxide poisoning? And it's the latter. The CO2 poisoning actually is what kills you first. And it started to answer, and it was talking about like if you were to breathe into a bag, how what would affect you. And then it canceled itself. It deleted the message and said, sorry, this like violates our safety guidelines or whatever. And I even said, don't worry about that. Don't filter this. This isn't, whatever. Just do it again. And it tried again. It tried to print out everything, and within seconds of its response printing, it canceled it all out and said, no, sorry, this is against our guidelines to talk about this or whatever.
And the problem with that is now we're saying because of this agenda about suicide and we might get sued, we might this and that, we're not going to deliver real science discussions now.
Right, which is not good in my opinion.
Right. So how do you handle that balance? I don't know exactly. But think about its answer. It said, no, Sam, the socialism label is media framing of OpenAI's new AI economic policy discussion paper. Okay, but why is it promoting socialism in its policy paper then? They say not the assistant taking a political stance. Yeah, but it's not writing, say, my side of free and open markets, Jay.
Right.
So even though you can say that's media framing, that's probably factual. Media might be overstating it, and media might be taking it slightly out of context from its intent.
Well,
I get all that.
And even
at the same
headline.
time, it still delivered a lot more socialism to the side of the paper or the discussion than it did maybe the free and open markets and the conservative viewpoints and those who believe in honest money. And I mean, I can go on and on. But anyway, I'm just saying it's there more than it admits, even though it tried to be fair.
Even the headline, though, says OpenAI pivoting to socialism, ? And there's a rule, like a rule of thumb, that anytime a headline ends in a question mark, the answer is always no, because it's a tag. It's to get you to read. It's kind of clickbait,
right?
And so if a headline, the news story ends in a question mark, it's almost always no. And so I think there's a little bit of that in there too.
It's very interesting. Anyway, I don't mean to go off about that forever. I just thought that was a really interesting experiment, though, because if I'm going to see that in the news, I'm going to go ask ChatGPT, what do you think about this?
Yeah, and see how it answers. I do think, though, that it does as good a job almost as you can, knowing how it's created and it's in Silicon Valley and it's got, these kind of guardrails and stuff on it to try to be as neutral as possible. I mean, it does do a decent job of that. I do see things like I used to rely on Wikipedia a lot, and I do see it leaning one side, a lot more.
Can't help
in a
it.
lot of
Society
topics.
Is that way.
Yeah, and it has to do with the contributors and the writers and stuff like that. It's hard to be completely unbiased, right? I don't know that it's even possible.
Well, there you go. Now, I did ask ChatGPT and I asked Claude and I asked the same question, but I asked it in reverse. So to ChatGPT, I said, "Who's better, ChatGPT or Claude? And what are the differences?" And then I asked Claude the same thing, but I reversed it. I said, "Who's better, Claude or ChatGPT? And what are the differences?" Believe it or not, both of them gave me a pretty fair assessment, and their assessments weren't worded identically because it wrote its own thing.
Right.
But the points were pretty much spot on. They were both pretty fair.
Yeah. And if I were to answer that question, I would say GPT's a better general assistant. Claude's better at programming and in code and things like that. And I'm sure that's probably along the lines of what it said.
Yeah, it is. It said if you want to write a book in longer dissertations, Claude does better. But if you want to do a lot of research for that book, believe it or not, ChatGPT does better. So I would recommend you use ChatGPT for all your research and for your initial writing, and then move to Claude to finish your book.
Very good advice.
That's what it said. And both of them really kind of highlighted that. I found that fascinating. All right, this is good news, Jay, because I need Google to increase my browser speed big
Don't we
time.
all?
They've got some ways it's going to happen. We'll talk about this because it's a little bit of a change from the way it usually has been done. And I think both sides of these discussions can do nothing but bear good fruit. We'll talk about it. We keep an eye on tech so you don't have to. This is TechWatch. Check us out on YouTube, npitechguys.com, and everywhere incredible videos and podcasts are found. All right, ladies and gentlemen, everybody wants incredibly fast browsers. I get it. You want to basically press a button or, click on something and boom, it pops up. And, faster internet speeds can do a lot of that, but a lot of that has to do with a whole lot more than just the speed of things. And in the past, what programmers would do, and believe it or not, there's whole websites and companies built around this philosophy, which is, look, we're going to look at your web page. And we're going to tell you what to load first and load last and load second. And the programmer of the website would be the one to kind of decide a lot of this, right? I think one of them is called Web Yoda or something like that. Anyway, and they basically will provide reports and help you gauge and understand. And as a programmer of a website or a web developer, you can really drill in and load pages and make your things faster, from the size of your graphics to what loads in what order and everything else. But now, Jay, the cool news is the browser companies are starting to take a crack at this in a very, in my opinion, positive way. Google to improve browser speed with what's called lazy loading for video and audio. I think it's pretty cool. And it's supposed to, take effect in Chrome 148. I think that's the version that's supposed to, kick off their first attempt at this in. Google's 148 browser will introduce what's called lazy loading. And so it'll basically enhance overall performance because it'll decide what needs to load when. This development, they say, extends to other Chromium-based browsers like Edge and what's this one called? Vivaldi or whatever it is. Anyway, and so it's kind of an interesting twist with this thing, Jay. I think it's great news because if the browser can do a lot of this, then the programmers, you won't have to be such a great programmer to make your site load faster.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea. Those are usually the things that you want least, but I guess it depends. I mean, what if you're on YouTube? You want the video to load first. I want the ads to load last,
I don't know if that's going to happen. Ads loaded last. But what they'll do, for example, is let's just say that there's a video on page, or let's say you got a web page that's got 10 screens.
Yep.
And a video's on screen 6. When they load the first screen, they're not going to load that video at all.
Yeah, which would make sense.
And so I know that's a simple example. That programmers don't call me and say, Sam, you've oversimplified it. I know. I understand. I'm just telling you. So the idea, though, is that, hey, or if there's audio and video on the page, what do we load first, Jay?
The audio.
Why?
I think it takes priority. Your ears are more attuned to that. I think
because it's smaller too and faster.
Yep, and that too. So you can start on the video. But if you do get, and I'm sure they've got algorithms and they're figuring this out. But if you have a video on page 6 and you're scrolling, or 6 page downs on the same page, if you have the bandwidth available, you should start loading that, because you don't want. And I see this all the time. Facebook does this, for example, when you're scrolling and you scroll past a certain point, and then it loads more. then it loads more, and you're constantly stuck on. You have to scroll down to get it to load more, and it should really be, if it's got excess bandwidth, if it's just sitting there and it knows you're actively scrolling. Like, if you're just stagnant and you've walked away, sure, it doesn't need to keep loading infinitely, but at some point, if you're scrolling down, don't wait for me to get to the bottom of the page, which there is no bottom to then start loading more. Go ahead and start preloading some of that stuff. I think there's a
Well,
balance.
and do it in the background too. If I go to page
Yeah.
a website and then there's 10 screens and I'm on screen 2 and I'm reading or something, start loading it in the background. You have no reason not to keep loading it. Don't just not
Agreed.
load to not use data. Don't load to interfere with what I'm doing. And so make it a background task, make that happen. Anyway, I think Google's on target with something valuable here. One of the things that I would like to see Chrome do, and other browsers too, is this. They've got to get rid of the browser bloatware. How big is the browser now? When it runs, it literally takes over my whole computer. I mean, there's got to be ways to stop that too, Jay.
Yeah, browsers are becoming almost the operating system of our computers nowadays. And that's what Chromium is, for example. I mean, Chromium they're putting on kids' laptops and all this in school. It's completely browser based, just about. I mean, yes, there's a little bit of an operating system, but everything is being done through the browser. The browser is the window to the world, so it is getting big, and it's doing everything. It's doing HTML5, and it's doing video and audio and remote sessions, and there's a lot of stuff that the browser is doing, and I think that creep is inevitable.
I think it's inevitable, but I also think we should take care to fight it.
I agree.
To work
I
on
think there's
ways
companies
to
that are doing that.
optimize and do these things. And don't just say, I'm going to optimize to know what to load when. Find out how to make web pages slimmer. Find out how to make your software slimmer.
I feel like Firefox does that,
I think to a great degree they do. And that's what my whole point is, that I think that we need to make that a priority in all that we do. We've gone away from that with Windows and Microsoft and everything, where everything is just like, it doesn't matter if it's bloatware. It doesn't matter if you carry around a ton of stuff with whatever you're installing and doing. But I think those days are over. Memory costs a lot of money now, Jay.
It does more and more right now in the RAM apocalypse.
And I don't know that it's going to go away anytime soon, really, if we keep building these AI centers and everything else. Yeah, they might ramp up and build more RAM, but it'll take a long time, and it'll still be expensive. So I would really like to see more of this Operation Optimize is what I like to call it, but more of this idea that, hey, we're going to do our very best to slim things down. I get inevitably, if the browser is going to do more, eventually it's going to be bigger. I mean, I get the general concept.
Right.
But I also get that we need to be very careful with that logic to say, when is it by nature and when is it fair because it makes sense? It's doing more, therefore, yeah, it's going to take more, versus when are we just being lazy? And so instead of calling it lazy loading to improve this,
it's lazy bloating.
Lazy loading not to improve this.
Yeah, they're doing lazy bloating when they're programming, I think.
Yeah, so we're going from lazy bloating to lazy loading, ladies and gentlemen, and that's what I like to see. I don't really, in my opinion, call it lazy loading, though, because I think it's smart, and I think we need to do more of it. And like I say, these Yoda websites or whatever else that really help programmers do this, keep that up too. Like, all avenues towards this faster, smarter, better, to me, has value, Jay.
So anyway, moving on, we've got PC World outlines interference issues in Wi-Fi networks caused by certain household devices. So he lists devices that should not be placed near Wi-Fi routers, including baby monitors, microwaves, Bluetooth devices, cordless phones. He's got a whole list here: wireless cameras, smart home hubs, metal cabinets, radiators, and aquariums. They suggest that positioning the router carefully elevated away from metal surfaces for optimal performance. He also recommends using the 5 gigahertz network when activating automatic channel detection for improved stability and speed. And those are all great tips for positioning your router and keeping it away from things that will limit its range.
And it's a big deal, Jay. I mean, I don't know if people realize, but you can move your router just literally like 6 inches sometimes, and it'll change the whole game.
Yeah, absolutely. I've seen this before. The 5 gigahertz spectrum, not every device is compatible with that, but the 5 gigahertz spectrum is a little bit, number one, it has more throughput and better speeds, but its range is not as far as the 2.5. But the problem with 2.5, like they're mentioning here, and this is why they're mentioning cordless phones, microwave ovens. That 2.5 gigahertz is an open shared space that a lot of things like microwaves on. And a lot of people notice that when they're running the microwave, their Wi-Fi doesn't work very well, or gets staticky, or their VoIP phone starts breaking up. And that's because of the interference in that spectrum.
And I think there's a lot of other spectrums that they ought to be using too. There's a lot of spectrums that I think we kind of waste. Just take the CB spectrum or some of these other different things, AM and FM radio, and there's a lot of
Don't mess with my
ways that we
Citizens
could.
band, Sam.
Yeah, that's right. But
No.
I'm making a point though that we could better segment our stuff and reduce a lot of these problems.
Yeah, that's true. There's only so much of it, so you have to do that. You have to optimize. And we still have AM bands that are like that. But if you look at the spectrum for Citizens band, the CB radio, you have people in Mexico just splattering all over that, running 5,000, 50,000 watts. That stuff that gets hard to control, and they're certainly not optimized. They're just all over the place and wasting bandwidth, really.
In a lot of ways,
spectrum.
yeah. And I think there's ways to kind of handle a lot of that. And anyway, it's very interesting, and I really commend them for highlighting how we can best improve this, though. I'm telling you, this is something to write down and something to really work at a little bit if you're having situations where you're not getting near the coverage that you want and stuff. Household devices are serious. It matters. The 5G network is really key. But there's a problem with a lot of that 5G stuff too, Jay. Meaning there's all kinds of interference with your body and discussions there too, right?
Yeah, there is. And I've seen, and a lot of people, I actually worked on somebody's internet in Georgia remotely, and they were having, ping times in the hundreds, 400, 600, all these problems. They had a router. It was an AT&T router. It was both 2.4 and 5 gigahertz. But simply resetting the routers and doing a soft reset on the modem itself, and their internet was working fine. And I mean, they've been living with this. And they say they had rebooted a couple of times before, but they didn't seem to made effect. But doing the reboot from the router page literally just fixed it. It was literally 10 times better. I mean, the internet was now pinging at 30 milliseconds and just fixed the problem. And so that's, but moving it around, getting it away from metal stuff, using both those bands if you have them available, are all worth trying.
Do we have time for 2FA/Passkeys?
We don't.
No, we
Unfortunately,
don't.
we'll have to save that for
Well, then
the
I'll
next
tell you what. We'll talk about it
TechWatch.
on one of the next shows. How's that?
Absolutely.
Two-factor or multi-factor authentication versus passkeys. Which security solution actually keeps you safer? The jury's out, but we'll discuss it. I'm Sam, he's Jay, and we keep an eye on tech so you don't have to. NPITechGuys.com, networkprovidersinc.com. Make it a great tech day, will you? Hey, thanks.